There's a trailer for Singularity that everyone seems to think is cool as shit, called Cause and Effect. It begins with a main character using his time manipulation device, from here on forth called TMD, on a broken vodka bottle, reviving it and about to drink it when several soldiers burst in and one of them shoots the vodka bottle, breaking it again, just as a Singularity event occurs and the main character gets pulled into the future or something. And then he sees some soldiers in that future reflected on the broken vodka bottle, just in time for him to use the time manipulation device on one of them and cause him to age to death. Or something. I didn't understand the trailer at all, nor could I quite grasp the significance of the trailer, but needless to say, there was something very cool about the trailer. Something there that hinted at some deeper meaning and perhaps some new gameplay mechanic that would separate the game from all the others. Singularity is by no means the first game to use time manipulation in its gameplay, but the ability to manipulate time in a first-person shooter is somewhat new and hasn't really been explored beyond the slow time and rewind time gameplay mechanics. Singularity seemed to promise a whole shit ton more than that, as suggested by the Cause and Effect trailer. Maybe reverse time on a bridge or something and cause it to collapse just as enemies are racing across it, or on a tire in some vehicle and cause it to swerve into a tree, or fast forward to the end of a game so you can finish it in 2 seconds and release a review of a game on the game's release date, or reverse time on Raquel Welch. I'm not even sure how the time manipulation could be used in a way that's beyond slowing time or rewinding time, but I was sure that Raven could somehow use this in a cool way or two, which is what makes this part of the game so fucking disappointing. Let's get this out of the way. There's nothing cool or new about this time manipulation device in terms of its impact on gameplay. The main way of using the time manipulation device is to point it at an object or an enemy and press the Q key. If you point it at an object, you will either age it or revive it. For example, if you use it on an old withered crate that used to contain ammo and med packs, using the TMD on it will revive the crate and make it brand spanking new with ammo and med packs contained within that you can pick up. Reversely, you can use the TMD on a brand spanking new crate and wither it and make it unusable. And that's basically how this device is used to solve puzzles. You see a set of stairs that are so old that you can't possibly climb it. You use a TMD on it and voila, brand spanking new stairs to climb. You see an overhead garage style door that's partially open but not open enough for you to crouch under and get through. And you can use a TMD on a crate and cause it to age and wither, stick the crate under the partially open overhead door, use the TMD on the crate so it can unshrink and raise the door just enough for you to crouch under and get through. It's not a bad use of a TMD, and certainly if the puzzles were a bit more complex or interesting, it would have been great. But as it is, the puzzles are way too simple, and they only make me wonder, why can't I just crawl underneath that space, or use my hands to grab the nearest ledge and haul myself over, instead of using the TMD just because the game doesn't let me grab onto ledges or crawl on the floor? I mean, pressing the Q key on a set of stairs and then pressing forward key is no more fun than simply pressing the forward key, right? But the most disappointing thing about using the time manipulation device is that it works only on very few objects. You can't use it on walls and cause the walls to rot enough so you can shoot through it or anything like that. There are only a few stairs and some craters and barrels that work with a TMD, and that's very disappointing. Using the TMD on an enemy does several things, depending on the type of enemy and how often you press a Q key. If it's a regular soldier, pressing the Q key on him will cause him to age and die like a vampire exposed to sunlight. That's kinda cool to see, but it's actually not all that fun to do cause, well, you're just pointing at him and pressing the Q key once. If you press the Q key twice on a soldier, he'll turn into one of the many mutants you'll encounter throughout the game. And luckily enough for you, he'll go after his former teammates before going after you. If you press the Q key on a mutant, it'll either slow it down if it's a fast moving mutant, turn visible if it's an invisible mutant, or do some other stuff that's mildly interesting. The TMD has some other abilities such as a gravity gun-like ability, or the ability to shoot some kind of energy ball that will burst into a giant time stasis sphere and anything caught in that giant sphere will be trapped and unable to move, or the ability to send a pulse that will stun and knock back nearby enemies. Basically, the thing about the TMD is that the device itself isn't anything special, and its ability to manipulate time is gimmicky at best, but it does accentuate two things the game does well. 1. It gives the game a sense of pacing. After you fought off a bunch of enemies, it's nice to get a little time off and spend the next few minutes solving a puzzle, no matter how simplistic and easy the puzzle may be. 2. More importantly, it gives the game some sense of variety. Make no mistake, this game is mainly a run and gun type game in the tradition of Quake 4 or Return to Castle Wolfenstein, both of which I consider to be good examples of the genre. And Raven has done a good job with Singularity as well. The most important thing about a run and gun game is, of course, the gunplay. The guns in Singularity are very nice. The pistol sucks balls, and you're probably never going to use it unless the game forces you to, but the rest of the weapons have a nice punch to them. The sound of them firing has a certain quality to them that gives the weapon some heft, and all the guns save the pistols are viable options till the very end of the game. For example, the machine gun, which is the second gun made available, is just as effective in the beginning of the game as it is at the end, which is nice, and that's mainly made possible by the well-implemented weapons upgrade system in the game. But the best thing about them is the variety. First off, you get a minigun. More games should give the players miniguns, because there's nothing better than mowing down a trillion enemies with a minigun. That's all I have to say about that. Second, beyond the usual machine gun and shotgun, you get a sniper rifle, something called a seeker, which shoots a bullet in slow motion that you can control and shreds the enemies into pieces, tearing off heads and limbs, and a grenade launcher that you can also control. You fire the grenade launcher and a little glowing ball plops to the ground, and you can control it like a remote control car and make it detonate upon reaching a horde of enemies. But beyond getting the sound and feel of the guns right, the game has good pacing and provides enough variety from keeping the game feeling repetitious. Pacing is pretty important for a game of this type. Just going around shooting everything in sight can be fun, of course, but that can be exhausting as well, and getting that break at just the right moment is very much welcome. And this game does that and more. It builds tension, kind of like Fear did. The game has a horror element with all those mutants running around looking all scary and doing weird things and making horrible noises. Not to say that the game is scary, it's not. The most it does is similar to what Fear did, which is use cheap shock tactics and jumping at you out of nowhere unexpectedly. But it also builds up tension well so that you're constantly on your toes, and when those moments do occur, you jump plenty. The puzzles and those creepy moments in which you're doing nothing but waiting for something to jump at you or surprise attack you keep the game moving at a good purposeful pace. More importantly, the game features a good variety that keeps the game from feeling too repetitious. A good mix of soldiers and monsters with varying abilities is part of the trick, but the real star of the game is the level design. It's not just a corridor shooter, though certainly it is very much linear and heavily scripted. Certainly, you've got moments in which you're shooting enemies ahead of you down a long and winding corridor. But you also have moments in which you're in a wide open space with enemy soldiers popping out from everywhere, from ahead, behind, above, below, and the sides. You have moments in which you're trapped in a confined space with mutants charging at you from all directions. It's a very deliberate design. I got the sense that Raven put a lot of thought into the overall design, as well as the type and number of enemies, and the direction from and circumstances in which they will engage a player, and they got just the right mix to keep things varied and interesting throughout. And I haven't even yet mentioned the story. The story is sci-fi bullshit, but it's interesting sci-fi bullshit. I'm not going to bother recounting the story, but I will say that it's got a few nice twists and turns, thanks to the whole time travel element involved. And it ends interestingly enough, in which a player is given 3 options to choose from. And while giving players options in the end and featuring multiple endings is nothing new and is beginning to feel kind of passé, it does give the story a bit more weight somehow. Certainly, the story's not going to keep you at the edge of your seat, but it does give the game another viable element through which it keeps the player moving forward. Singularity isn't the type that will bring anything new to the table, but then again so few games do. If you're hoping for a game that does something new with time manipulation, you'll have to look elsewhere. No, you'll find Singularity to be all too familiar, but it does feature guns that feel and sound right, good purposeful pacing, and enough variety, and I feel that's just enough in this day and age when all games seem to tout something new and innovative, and so few actually do.